The best way to describe my relationship with university is like an abusive relationship. In the beginning, I thought, oh my gosh, this is great. This university has all of these attributes that I wanted. And then as time went on, I realized that was not the case. I was consistently bombarded. They would stop for a bit and then they would continue. It would get really good and then it would get really bad. And it came to the point where I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. I didn't have the motivation to do even the basic work that I can do from home because I don't feel respected and I don't feel heard in the institution. My name is Tiffany. I go to Waterloo University and I am in recreation and leisure with the focus of therapeutic rec. The biggest thing that happened throughout this entire thing was that they started bombarding us with a bunch of emails stating that we're non-compliant and how to become compliant and the consequences of not being compliant underneath the university. My first thoughts when I originally applied to Waterloo was that 1, this was my dream school, 2, they had an amazing program, 3, they had a great reputation, and 4, I thought Waterloo had the integrity and dignity to be more exclusive and inclusive of people and their choices. But as time went on, they destroyed all of those ideologies that I had of them. So as of now, I have not been forced to de-enroll or to defer. They've been optioning people to defer. I've been slowly cutting back my courses so I can continue staying in the institution. However, I do know many people that have had to defer and have lost their education because of this. When back in, I believe it was 2020, I had a big scare. I had ovarian cancer, so I lost half of my reproductive system, to which it got me really intrigued and just becoming touch and go with what medical procedures that I did, to the point where when the vaccine came out, I was looking into things. I was making sure nothing was going to affect the one ovary that I was blessed with. And as I started to realize and understand just from my own investigative skills and research, that there was some issues coming to the reproductive system, specifically with Pfizer. And I brought that to my doctor, trying to get a medical exemption because of my concerns and how much that specific trauma had affected me, to which I was denied. When I went into the university and I told them these things, they brought me to accommodations. But during that time, they said I could only go with a religious creed. During that time, though, they decided that it didn't really matter. They didn't give me any guidelines. They didn't give me any information really about what was going to happen. So I decided to fight back and highlight the issues that were occurring in the paperwork and in the institution. And it started with what they like to call a survey. The survey is not a survey. When you look at the fine details and the actual language within it, it's actually a legally bound document that you can only agree to. One of the first guidelines in the Canadian Charter, especially when it comes to informed consent, is that an individual is allowed to deny or accept. And if they are allowed to do it without any reasoning. And if they are to ask to be reasoned, they then have to go in with specific guidelines. So the first response that I got was because I refused to do the wonderful survey that they keep quoting. They stated that I was not compliant. I got put on a specialized list. I emailed them back and stated that this is a legally bound and formatted letter. It's not actually a survey. It does not mean anything that is known to be a survey. And that due to the inability of denial of any of the specific points, that I will not be signing and agreeing to any of the terms that they're trying to make me sign. So after that, they started to put holds on my account. They put a hold so I could not pick any of my courses. So I sent in my signature amended along with a notice and moving forward, a religious belief statement. Then they redirected me to accommodations where I met or started communicating with a woman. She was very forward, and I let her know that the university is currently overstepping their obligations and fiduciary duties, and that is held at a very high legal hand. And then I let her know as well that they're not meeting any guidelines for informed consent, to which means that I cannot make a actual decision on consenting And I will not, and still will not, give them my consent, specifically if they're not going to show me the duty and respect of a person. To which now I've been told that I am no longer allowed to have a accommodation, and I've had to request multiple times now, I believe I'm on round 2, for a formal denial form explaining why my concerns on informed consent, along with my religious beliefs that I did hand in with the information and multiple sources, I believe there was over 40 sources that I gave them, were completely bypassed by the institution and her specifically. When I gave them a full letter, I was very to the point, stating I did not want any of them looking at other people's religious beliefs and comparing them to mine. I didn't want them Googling it, and I genuinely did not want it passed around. I already had another statement in there that I said was allowed to be within the guidelines and the process of accommodation, but they completely just wrote me off. So the first time that I spoke to my advisor, the only option that I had was to be transferred into a university down in Alberta. And I realized that even though I was to do it online, that might just be the option for me. And I told them, because of all of the different legal junctures and what was happening, that I'm willing to work with them and go 50-50 as long as we were doing it at a consensus. At that point, I was making it clear, like, I'm not trying to be difficult. However, if you're going to treat me as though I'm an outlier, I'm not going to stand for it. And I'm sorry, but I am an educated woman, and I'm not going to bend to your will and need just because you have a label. In the beginning of all of this, I had a career, and I still have a career building programs for kids. And I genuinely love my career. I think it's amazing. But due to this entire thing, I've lost hope in that dream. I've lost my own personal drive to be educated, specifically in the university. And my classes have gone down the drain. My marks have gone down the drain. My mental health has been just demolished. There are nights where I'd be tossing and turning, wondering if I'm even going to be able to do my exams, whether or not I'll have another semester, whether or not I'll be able to get another job due to the mandates because I'd left, whether or not there was even a possibility that I can become what I wanted to be and what I felt I deserved to become and provide for others. And I felt completely just disrespected. The best way to describe my relationship with university is like an abusive relationship. In the beginning, I thought, oh my gosh, this is great. This is amazing. This university has all of these attributes that I wanted, every trait and value that I personally had. And then as time went on, I realized that was not the case. I was consistently bombarded. They would stop for a bit and then they would continue. It would get really good and then it would get really bad. And it came to the point where I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. I didn't have the motivation to do even the basic work that I can do from home. When it came to classes, I was beginning to slack on my lectures, and to this day I still am, because I don't feel respected and I don't feel heard in the institution. And even though now they're quote unquote pausing the program, the ideology that's just become of the students is grotesque. A lot of them are very vocal and outspoken about how they view people who did not follow or aren't back. And it makes you feel like you can't even be on the campus that you paid for. It's like telling somebody to go and face their abuser every day and get through it. And I know some people aren't gonna get that, and that's okay, but that's the best thing that I can use as an analogy. I've lost confidence in a lot of people that I know. I've lost friends, family members who think like I'm just absolute garbage when it comes to people that I walk by. A lot of the time, especially if I'm just going as a pedestrian, it makes me wonder, like, how do you view people like me? Even like online, it's just become completely changed. I don't want to be online. I don't want to be around anybody. I feel like I'm on an iceberg and it's just falling apart. And I don't know when the next piece is going to just fall off and I'm going to be kicked out of my education. I have experience from my sister who went to a college and they kicked her out even after she paid for tuition, and she lost her entire semester. And I genuinely fear that that's going to happen to me as well. Even if they somehow, by the grace of God, they decide like, okay, yeah, it's fine. come on back in, it's fine, we're not pausing, we're gonna get rid of the policy. The fact that they're still clinging onto a policy, even though through data, scientific research, and just the way that the vaccines have kind of rolled out with the immunity, that it's a controversial topic, whether or not it's effective or not effective. And the fact that they're not taking into account that natural immunity is a thing. People might have their own regime of health, they have their own ways of bypassing, and that we're able, young adults or just full-blown adults, to make our own decisions for our own bodily autonomy shows the amount of control that the university wants. And at this point, I think in the fall, and I feel like in the fall, if they do bring back the passports, that's just asserting their control once again, and brings me back to the same analogy of it being an abusive relationship, where they'll give you so much and then they'll come back and give it to you harder, 10 times worse, till you get used to it, and then they'll slack up again and you'll keep going. And it's just a never-ending cycle that you get sucked into to the point where you can't get out. At this point, I think as a society, we need to come together and realize that vaccinated, unvaccinated, partially vaccinated, purple, blue, pink, transgendered, anybody, it doesn't matter. Like, we're all humans, we all love each other, and we need to come together as one to fight against what they're actually doing. Like, at this point, it's not a battle between me and some person on the street. This is a battle between whether or not I'm gonna have the same abilities and rights as somebody who might completely agree with everything that the government's doing. I firmly believe that our government is beyond overstepping. You have no business in my medical history and deciding what happens to my body. So if you feel like getting is how you're gonna protect yourself, 100% I'm for you. Go ahead, do what you feel like you need to do. If you wanna wear a mask because it makes you feel safe, sure, go ahead, great. However, I'm not a guinea pig, I'm not your puppet, and I can make my own decisions. I'm a grown woman, but don't force me to fit your narrative. I don't feel safe around people, because if you say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, cross somebody's personal agenda or narrative, they might become hostile. And it's come to the point where I've spoken to some people about my own views, and I've sat down and I said, like, this is what I think. And then they're like, no, you're absolutely wrong. You're just this, and this, and this, and you're completely, like, you're garbage. And I've noticed that there's no room for a conversation. If you do not have enough emotional strength to sit there and have a proper conversation with somebody and not yell at them and scream at them and call them anything underneath the sun, maybe you shouldn't be having those conversations and talking about that topic. Maybe you need to take back and understand why you're so involved. And it comes to me too, it comes to everybody on any spectrum, whether you're against something or with something, or you have a different ideology as to another group. We're all emotionally charged, and that's the issue, is that we're getting too emotional about something we might not even have any leg room in. And as to letting those things work themselves out and coming to a consensus to where we're making it better, we're just fighting like cats and dogs and not understanding what's actually happening and getting things straight. There's a point where we need to leave the heart at home and let the brain do the thinking. Amity means to me a platform to vocalize what's happening. I've been shut out multiple times, and it's time to come together and put our differences aside and actually work together for a common goal. It's not just about the universities at this point. It's not about whether or not you believe in something that another person believes. It's about what we want for the future. What do we want for our kids? What do we want our society to look like?